Hi, Jamie Lynn here from Heartfelt Horsemanship. This is Gareth and a green filly named Moonshine. Gareth is going to demonstrate the first steps to the backing process. If you followed the masterclass series, you probably saw our first set of videos. Gareth working with a fairly difficult little Arabian horse, so we're hoping that we can share Moonlight with you and have the process look a little bit more normal to what we do. Moonlight has had very little handling. She can kind of have her feet done and has been led a little bit, still really bad at leading. And Gareth is going to put the basics in place. If you follow our Positive Progress series, that means that she's going to learn to back up, move her hindquarters, move her forequarters, stay out of Gareth's space, and be sent forward before we move on to the next step of accept the saddle. So the principles that apply to a backup are as light as possible, as firm as necessary, suggest, ask, promise, tell. Using your rope and rope halter in this way teaches the horse how to yield from pressure on the halter. What the knots on either side of the nose mean. That pressure motivates and release teaches. So what the horse is learning is if Gareth wiggles the rope and the horse steps backwards, Gareth will quit shaking the rope and quit stimulating the horse to do something, and that release of pressure is what teaches the horse how to back up. So Gareth is going to suggest, he's going to ask, he's promising, and now he's telling, asking Moonlight to yield her feet backwards and a release of pressure. So Moonlight hasn't had a whole lot of structure or education in her life, so Gareth is making sure that we're allowing Moonlight a lot of dwell time to think about the right answer. So Moonlight takes a step forward the wrong way, and Gareth is going to use rhythmic pressure in the rope to drive the horse backwards and tell her that it wasn't time for her to walk off. So what we'd like to have happen here is we'd like her to think that maybe she should just stand and wait for further instruction. Reading Moonlight, she's, looking around, she's a little unsure of life. Gareth giving her that dwell time and also undemanding time near him will start helping her to develop confidence in a human. Because right now she doesn't have a whole lot. So when we're thinking about the first steps of this process, we want to remember that a young horse is a very delicate training process. We want things to come out good for the horse and the human, so we're going to take the time it takes, with the horse be in charge of the timeline. Gareth is positioning his rope so he doesn't have to manage coils in front of him that he could possibly step on. He's going to suggest, ask, promise, tell, and ask Moonlight to disengage, remembering that disengagement takes the worry out and becomes our game over for all the work that we do. And ultimately to give Moonlight a release and have her learn how to respond to pressure accordingly.
I'm going to give her a little easier release because I don't think
She stepped over fairly well.
Yeah, not bad.
So looking at Moonlight, her toes are quite long, and so she's kind of standing camped out and in a funny position. So Gareth is going to give her a little bit of leeway and not expect her to be able to bend through her ribs and step deep under herself in the first session because she's not used to using her body that way. Remember, the attitude of justice is effective, meaning that, we're not going to expect perfection every time. We're going to assess the situation and make sure that if we've made a request, that wasn't too bad. If we've made a request, we're going to follow through until the horse responds appropriately, and then we're going to have a release of pressure. Remembering that the best horse trainers in the world, they have one thing in common, and that is they release at the slightest try. It's always quite interesting seeing how these young horses learn very quickly. If you give them the dwell time and the release of pressure to think about what they might have done right to have you quit shaking your rope or using intense body language to maneuver them. But that dwell time is setting up a positive pattern of behavior. Suggest, ask, promise. Gareth didn't have to tell. So Gareth is reminding Moonlight not to crowd his space. So you can see Moonlight's still a little bit nervous. She's not nervous and running off. She's kind of nervous and maybe a little bit stuck to the ground, but she feels the right answer is actually, in fact, crowding into Gareth's space. So Gareth is going to use that backup to drive her out of his space for his own safety, as well as to set in good habits of not crowding into a human when she gets nervous. Suggest, ask, promise, tell, waiting for the near foot to step under the far foot. Have the horse end up back and away from you, giving you 2 eyes and 2 ears, and most importantly, a change of eye. I feel like Moonlight's quite introverted, so she gets very, very stoic. She's not readily licking and chewing, meaning her mouth is open and her tongue's coming out when she licks and chews. If you look at her mouth, you see little tiny movements. And the reason for that is an introverted horse will keep their mouth closed so they can keep their airways open. So if she does decide she needs to flee the scene, she has enough oxygen available in her body to do so and not run out of steam. You can see it almost looks like she's got her breath, she's holding her breath and taking really quick, shallow breaths. That's very common in an introverted horse, so that's one thing that we're going to pay attention to and cause to change so our horse can relax. And she'll be telling us that she's not in flight mode. Flight mode doesn't necessarily mean that your horse is spooking and leaving. Flight mode begins long before that, and you can see Moonlight she's got her head tipped away from Gareth. When they stop and turn face and wait, she takes her eyes in her ears and looks over her shoulder. So right there you saw Moonlight's eyes leave. It's only a matter of time before her body follows, so it's almost like she's saying, if you do one more thing that frightens me or worries me, I'm going over there. I think I might need to go over there. She's planning her escape route. So she's not readily licking and chewing and opening her mouth, so she has wind available. I think I'm kind of watching her flanks, and her flanks are, kind of really shallow breathing, keeping just enough to go through there. So if she does build up steam and leave, what'll happen is she'll take in a great big lung full of air and have enough steam to leave the scary situation. We have to remember that training young horses is it's not natural for them, though I believe horses have been selectively bred to be human partners since the beginning of the horse and human relationship. But she still has a right to be afraid. We're predators, we eat meat, she's a prey animal.
You meat?
So right now we're trying to help her understand that we're not going to kill her. We don't intend on eating her one bite at a time. Gareth, I need to edit this video because the camera just went really blurry. Oh, there we go. Okay, there was something over the camera. Sorry for that. Yeah. Just went really blurry for a second. Alright, so Gareth is going to move the forequarters, move the hindquarters, and I'm watching Moonshine's body language. So Gareth, she thinks Gareth might disengage her, and she has that hind foot organized to do something with. She's not necessarily standing with her legs straight. So Gareth wants to get all of these dance steps correct before he ever considers getting on her back. You know, the reason why we do groundwork is we can prepare a horse to be ridden. And if the horse doesn't know what the end of that halter means, we're probably going to end up with a rodeo on our hands. So the groundwork that we're doing today is how we build and prepare a horse to accept a human, accept a saddle, accept a rider. Gareth is moving the forequarters. I want the near foot to step across the far foot. You know, mostly we do this so we have a horse who's maneuverable and turnable without us having to crank on our reins hard. But we also want to be able to get Moonlight out of our space. And you can see she takes her nose over there and puts her shoulder in Gareth's space. So he's going to address the front end and make sure that the front end can go away from him, keeping him safe and setting the horse up for good habits going forward. And see, she doesn't really know what the confines of that halter mean, so she's just starting to figuring out that she doesn't need to pull on a human, she doesn't need to fight, and maybe if she stands and waits for a signal from Gareth's body language that she can carry on and know what to do. Horses do not know this. At birth, a lot of people start horses and begin the training process by just getting the saddle on and hoping that they can tug the horse around any direction at any speed. That's usually what creates bad horses, and we get called in to train those horses after the fact. For Moonshine to learn how to yield her hindquarters, her forequarters go backwards and be driven forward. Now we're setting her up for a positive pattern of progress in her future life, because she'll know how to move around a human. Moving around a human and staying this close to a predator is not anything that is normal or natural for a prey animal to do. So this little horse has a right to be afraid, and she needs to learn how to adapt to our world. Gareth is giving ample dwell time. She's actually being quite evasive if you see her body language. She's focused on her herd mates nearby. And she's not really connected to Gareth yet. So Gareth is just going to take the time that it takes until Moonshine decides that maybe being with him isn't the worst thing in the world. And Gareth won't pass go through that process.